Problem 3-113. Add, subtract, multiply, or divide the following rational expressions. Simplify your answers if possible. So we've got 4 different expressions. Each contains a different operation. We're going to start out with A. We're adding the two fractions, 2x over 3x squared plus 16x plus 5. And we're adding the fraction 10 over 3x squared plus 16x plus 5. First thing we always want to do with addition and subtraction is we want to make sure that we end up with a common denominator so we can actually add it. In this case, even though this hasn't been factored already, we're looking at them, we have common denominators. So we can take these and add them and make them into one fraction. So I'm going to take my 2x and I'm going to add my 10. So plus 10 over my denominator. We have 3x squared plus 16x plus 5. This is the same thing as if we were dealing with numbers. If you think about if you had 1/4 plus 1/4, they have the same denominator, which means we can rewrite it as one fraction by adding our numerators or doing whatever operation is going on there over 4, which gives us 2/4. When we add 1/4 and 1/4, we get 2/4. And everybody knows 2/4 can simplify down because 2 and 4 each share the factor 2, which gives us 1/2. Well, we're going to do the same thing now with this fraction. We look at our numerator and our denominator and we want to see, do they share any common factors? In order to tell if they do, we need to factor each of the expressions. Factoring the numerator, we see that it's 2x plus 10. There is a factor that goes into 2 and 10, and that is actually 2. So we have 2 times what number is 2x? Well, that would have to be an x. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times what is 10? That would be plus 5. So we have 2 times the quantity of x plus 5 over. And we have a trinomial here. There is no common factor between 3, 16, and 5 besides the number 1. So we're going to see if it factors into 2 binomials here. So we're going to end up with 3x and x. And if factoring is something that you're struggling with or you're trying to improve and work upon right now, go ahead and pause this video, factor this using whatever method you know how to use, and then see if you get the same answer that I get. By just copying down whatever I've got on here may not necessarily help you if you get to your test and you can't factor it yourself. So I have a 3x and an x, and I should have a plus 5 here and a plus 1 in this one. When we look at this, we have a common factor. X plus 5 divided by an x plus 5 is going to be the same thing as saying 1. So x plus 5 and x plus 5 become 1 and 1. So we're saying 2 times 1 is going to give us 2. And this quantity times 1 is going to stay the same. So we have 3x plus 1 in our denominator. So our answer ends up being 2 over 3x plus 1. That is our simplified answer for A. Now let's look at B. X squared minus x minus 12 over 3x squared minus 11x minus 4 times 3x squared minus 20x minus 7 over x squared minus 9. Whenever you get something that has a bunch of trinomials in it and you're asked to simplify, you're always going to want to try to factor everything first. So I'm going to go ahead and factor my expressions here. So my first numerator, x squared minus x minus 12, should factor into x minus 4 and x plus 3. My denominator should factor into 3x plus 1 and an x minus 4. Now we're still multiplying here, and let's go ahead and factor our second fractions expressions. So the 3x squared minus 20x minus 7 will end up actually factoring into 3x plus 1 and x minus 7. Our denominator, x squared minus 9, is a difference of two squares. X squared is a perfect square, 9 is a perfect square, and we're subtracting. And we've studied over this. The pattern that we come up with is expressions like this, or polynomials like this, will factor into two binomials. The square root of our first term minus the square root of our second term times an expression that contains the square root of the first term plus the square root of the second term. So in this case, let's just go ahead and do it. We have two binomials. The first term is going to be the square root of what we have in the first term here, and both of them. And our last term is going to be the square root of that last term, which is going to be 3. And we know they're going to have different signs. So we're going to have one that's going to be a positive, one's going to be a negative there. So now everything's factored. Because this is multiplication all the way across, we can just treat this like it's one fraction. You can just treat this like it's like one big fraction. All you're doing is multiplying everything here. Let's pull out our factors. It'll give us a value of 1. Change colors so we can see there. Well, here I've got an x minus 4. And when we divide it by itself, that's going to give us a 1 and a 1. We have an x plus 3, and when we divide it by this x plus 3, that gives us a value of 1. We also have the 3x plus 1 and the 3x plus 1. So we get 1 times 1 times 1 times the quantity of x minus 7 gives us x minus 7 in our numerator. And then multiplying the 1s times our last quantity here, we end up with x minus 3. Remember, these x's cannot simplify anymore. You're subtracting 3 from this one, and you're subtracting 7 from the top one here. You can't cancel out a binomial or simplify it there unless it has the exact same binomial on the bottom. So this is your answer for letter B. Moving on to C here. Now C is a division problem. And remember, when you're doing division, a lot of people find it easier to just go ahead and rewrite it as multiplication before you start doing anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with this one. If you think about the problem, 10 divided by 2 equals 5. Well, if we start with the same thing and we change it to multiplication, what do we have to multiply 10 by to get 5? Well, that would be 1/2. 10 times 1/2 gives us 5. So remember, when you change division to multiplication, you're going to have to look at this relationship here. What is the relationship between 2 and 1/2? That is the reciprocal. So this is like 2 over 1, and this is 1/2. So when we change this, we're going to rewrite it as this fraction times the reciprocal of this one. I'll do that. I'm going to do that right below here. So I'm going to have 2x squared plus 8x minus 10 over 2x squared plus 15x plus 25. And we're going to change our division to multiplication. and I'm going to make sure I remember to take the reciprocal of this. So before I do any factoring and stuff, I'm going to rewrite it just so I don't make any mistakes and forget to do it. That's one thing that I notice students do. Sometimes we get all into the factoring and we forget to write the reciprocal. So we have 2x squared plus x minus 10 is now our numerator, and 4x squared plus 20x minus 24 is now my denominator. So 24. Now it's just like our multiplication problems. Let's factor and then take out any values of 1 that we can find between our numerators and denominators. Well, in factoring 2x squared plus 8x minus 10, first thing you want to look for is there a common factor? 2 goes into 2, 8, and negative 10 here. So I'm going to pull out a 2. And I'm left with x squared plus 4x minus 5. My denominator, I can factor into two binomials here. It should end up being 2x plus 5 and x plus 5. Our new numerator here, we have 2x squared plus x minus 10 here, factors into two binomials. We should get a 2x and an x. And let's see, we should have factors of 10, have a difference of 1. So we'd have, so 2 times 2 would give us 4. We have 5 times 1 is 5. And we want more positives than negatives. So you should have 2x plus 5 and x minus 2. And that is over. Your denominator also has a common factor. 4 goes into all three of these values. So you can take out your 4, and you're left with x squared plus 5x minus 6. And there is one more set of factoring here. We can factor these trinomials, so then we can start to pull out our values that would give us 1. So I'm going to do that real quick here. I don't want this video to get too long, so I'm going to go ahead and just do it. We have 2. X squared plus 4x minus 5 should factor into x plus 5 and x minus 1 over 2x plus 5 times x plus 5. The denominator hasn't changed. I'm only changing these trinomials right now. So I'm going to recopy my numerator here. These problems can seem long and tedious, but the more you practice them, the faster you get, and you don't have to show every little detail like I'm showing. I just want to make sure that you're understanding where things are coming from. So we have 4 down here, and then x squared plus 5x minus 6 should factor into x plus 6 and x minus 1. Now that we have all multiplication, it's like one big fraction, and we can look for common factors between the numerator and the denominator. I see here that I have an x plus 5 and an x plus 5, which would be like 1 and 1. I know that 2x plus 5 and 2x plus 5, when I divide those, it gives me 1. And I have an x minus 1 and an x minus 1, but when we divide that by itself, it gives us 1. We do have a little bit more that can simplify. I'm going to rewrite this first. I have 2 times 1 times 1 times 1 times this quantity of x minus 2. So I have 2 times x minus 2 over 1 times 1 times 4 times the quantity of x plus 6 times 1, which gives us 4 times x plus 6. Our binomials are not the same, so they will not give us a value of 1. They don't simplify anymore. But our monomials, 2 and 4, share a factor of 2, so 2/4 reduces to 1/2. So we're looking at x minus 2. You could say it's times 1 if you need to see it first. And then this becomes 1/2, and we have x plus 6. And to simplify it all the way, we're going to end up with x minus 2. When we distribute the 1, distribute the 2, you should get 2x plus 12. There is our answer for letter C. Last one, D. Scroll down a little bit here. We have 7 over x minus 5, and we're going to subtract the quantity of 4 minus 6x over x squared plus 10x plus 25. So as we get started here, oh, I noticed that I copied the problem wrong, which would have been real fun to go through. One thing you always want to double check, did you copy the problem down correctly? This should be 7 over x plus 5. Glad I caught that there, because I don't want to start all over. So we need a common denominator, so we need to know what the factors are of our denominators. Now I'm going to go ahead and factor anything that can be factored to see if anything simplifies on my way to looking for a common denominator. Sometimes you can get it by simplifying first. So my first denominator is going to remain the same here. Well, the whole entire fraction is. We're going to be still at 7 over x plus 5. We're subtracting 4 minus 6x. Well, 4 and 6 each share a factor of 2. So we can factor out a 2. And we have 2 minus 3x. Now that may help us, it may not. We'll see after we factor this one. X squared plus 10x plus 25, perfect square trinomial. So we should end up with x plus 5 times an x plus 5. Or you could say that quantity squared if you want to. Either way, when we look at it now, we did factor this, but it does not have any factors that it shares in our denominator, so it's not going to simplify for us yet. This denominator has 2 factors of x plus 5. This one only has 1. So we're going to need to multiply this fraction by the value of 1 in the form of x plus 5 over an x plus 5. We do that there because remember, this has a value of 1. We're not altering the value of anything in our problem, but we're just going to rewrite it so that we can see it. So right now we should have 7 times the quantity of x plus 5 over our quantity of x plus 5 times the quantity of x plus 5. Be careful with your parentheses. I don't have them written here. I'll actually should probably go back and add them in just so there's no confusion there. And we're subtracting 2 times 2 minus 3x, all over the same denominator. Now that we have the same denominator, we can take this and write it as one fraction. So just take your numerator here, 7 times x plus 5, and we're subtracting all of this, remember. So we're subtracting 2 values of 2 minus 3x. This is all over x plus 5 times x plus 5. Let's simplify our numerator. You're going to have to distribute your 7 through. So 7 times x gives us 7x. 7 times 5 gives us 35. So 7x plus 35. Now we're going to be taking away 2 quantities of 2 minus 3x. So if I take away 2 times 2 or two values of 2, I'm really taking away 4. And if I take away two values of negative 3x, or if I take away negative 3x, if I take away a negative 3x twice, that's like saying plus 6x. You're just distributing the negative 2 through. Well, instead of rewriting the whole entire thing again here, let's just go ahead and simplify that on our way to rewriting 7x plus 6x is going to give us 13x. And 35 minus 4 is going to give us 31. So we have 13x plus 31. And that's all over our quantity of x plus 5 times x plus 5, or you may write it squared. Either way will work there. But that is going to be your answer for D. If you have questions, please make sure you ask your teacher. Some of these problems, if you mess up on your factoring at the beginning, it'll throw the entire thing off. So you have to be careful. I hope this helped you out there. Like I said, get help if you need it. Otherwise, make sure you can go back through, pause it, to make sure that you've got everything correct before you move on. This is problem 3-113. Thank you.